President Trump today signing an executive order to have federal agencies work alongside Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now to discuss. So good evening, Jack. You've been following this throughout the day. What sorts of cuts is DOGE making?
Well, the goal of these cuts is to cut staff and limit hiring in the federal government. And we're already seeing this with Trump offering those federal buyouts to employees of 8 months of full pay with benefits, of which already 70,000 people have accepted. Now, speaking from the Oval Office, President Trump and Elon Musk said that DOGE has identified billions in fraud, including payments to deceased individuals, for instance. Musk says that a large bureaucracy gets in the way of democracy. Take a look.
And, you know, I have a Saturday deadline, and I don't think they're going to billions and billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse. And I think it's very important. And that's one of the reasons I got elected. I said, we're going to do that. Nobody had any idea it was that bad, that sick, and that corrupt.
We have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative.
Now, last week, a federal judge blocked DOGE's access to the Department of Labor data in response to a lawsuit from various unions. Another federal judge the next day also restricted DOGE's access to Treasury Department payment system data. Trump here alleging bias. Watch.
And it seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption, and it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation.
And there were also some playful moments there where Elon Musk's son, X, interrupted him a few times while he was speaking, sticking his fingers in Musk's ears and just causing a little bit of a humorous scene there. But speaking of obstacles to Trump's implementing his agenda, moments ago, a federal appeals court rejected Trump's bid to pause a lower court's order. That lower court order stopped Trump from freezing billions in federal spending of loans, grants, and other assistance. Steve.
Jack, Trump and Israel's prime minister are promising to resume fighting if Hamas, the terrorist group, doesn't release all of the hostages by this Saturday. That's as Hamas has paused those releases. What's going on here?
Right. So Trump says that Hamas here is just buying time, saying that the terrorists are releasing the healthy hostages first, and the hostages that they have left and are not releasing are in pretty bad shape. Trump also says that Hamas has until Saturday, like you said, at noon to release all those hostages, or else, he said, all hell will break out and fighting will resume. Watch.
And, you know, I have a Saturday deadline, and I don't think they're going to make the deadline personally. I think they want to play tough guy, but we'll see how tough they are. A bully is the weakest person, and they're bullies. Hamas is bullies.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israeli military, they're already gearing up outside of Gaza, ready to fight if the hostages aren't released this weekend. Take a look.
In the light of Hamas's announcement of its decision to violate the agreement and not release our hostages, last night I ordered the IDF to gather forces inside and around the Gaza Strip. This operation is being carried out at this time. It will be completed in the very near future.
Now, earlier in the day, Trump met with the King of Jordan at the White House, and that's as Trump is working to relocate Palestinians living in Gaza to Jordan and Egypt. Now, King Abdullah committed to take around 2,000 children with cancer and other illnesses in Gaza, and he said so in front of the press today, but didn't comment when asked if he'll take more Palestinians. Now, the Egyptian media is reporting that Egypt's president postponed his trip to Washington indefinitely. His foreign minister paid a visit to D.C. on Monday, and it's clear that afterwards the foreign ministry released a statement saying that the Arab countries are not in favor of the U.S. occupying Gaza and sending out the Palestinians until further notice. Steve.
NTD's Jack Bradley, thank you. The European Union vowing to impose countermeasures, this for President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. If enacted, this could potentially target American industries from textiles to motorcycles. In a statement, the EU Commission president says the U.S. tariffs, quote, will not go unanswered, adding the move will trigger firm and proportionate countermeasures. From the EU, President Trump has been criticizing the EU for what he believes to be unfair treatment for the United States, citing the EU's trade surplus as a reason for additional tariffs. The chair of the Federal Reserve testifying in the Senate today. What's in store for the economy and interest rates?
Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, testified on Capitol Hill. He told the Senate Banking Committee that the economy overall seems to be moving in a pretty healthy direction and is doing pretty good. He says indicators are suggesting that conditions in the labor market are in balance.
Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has continued to expand at a solid pace. GDP rose 2.5% in 2024, bolstered by resilient consumer spending.
And one big question a lot of people have is about interest rates. Now, Powell said that the central bank is in no rush at the moment to make any changes related to interest rates.
With our policy stance now significantly less restrictive than it had been, and the economy remaining strong, we do not need to be in a hurry to adjust our policy stance.
And during the hearing, both the chairman and ranking member expressed concerns about possible politics seeping its way into the Federal Reserve. Chairman Scott said that back in 2020 at the start of the Biden administration that the Fed was, quote, influenced by green financing and climate change. And then earlier this year with the incoming Trump administration, it flopped on that issue. And Senator Warren, the ranking member of the committee, also expressed concern about possible lack of banking oversight.
If the CFPB is not there examining these giant banks to make sure they are following the laws on not cheating consumers, who is doing that job?
I can say no other federal regulator.
No one. In other words,
some Republicans see the CFPB as an overreach, and there are a lot of indicators saying that the agency is currently undergoing a lot of major changes with the Trump administration. And Powell also talked about mortgage rates. He said that due to the central bank's limited influence on long-term interest rates, mortgage rates are not likely to go down anytime soon, and also due in part to housing shortages around certain parts of the U.S., housing costs are also likely to stay high. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
A federal judge has blocked the Trump administration's effort to cut the National Institute of Health, NIH, funding for research programs at universities and medical systems. Lawyers for dozens of research institutions told the judge that the change would have a severe impact on critical public health research. The judge agreed with the 22 Democrat-led states that cost-cutting should be blocked temporarily. A second lawsuit filed on Monday also says the cuts would devastate medical research, and a third lawsuit asked the judge to expand her initial action to apply not just to states that had sued. Late Monday, the judge expanded the pause on NIH cost-cutting nationwide. House Republicans announced a new Oversight Committee task force, while House Democratic leadership joins protests against President Trump and Elon Musk. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
Congressman James Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, announced this Tuesday the creation of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets.
The federal government has not answered these questions. This creates distrust in our institutions. That ends today. And the mandate of this task force is to acquire that transparency.
The newly created task force will be led by Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna. The task force will not have subpoena power, but will work closely with congressional and federal partners to compel testimony if required.
We'll be conducting investigations into the following: the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and Dr. Martin Luther King, unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAPs, unidentified submerged objects, also known as USOs, the Epstein client list, the origins of COVID-19, and the 9/11 files.
According to Congresswoman Ana Paulina Luna, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson chose her personally to lead the new task force. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson also threw his support behind the works of the Department of Government Efficiency regarding government spending.
They're uncovering things that we have known intuitively have been there, but we couldn't prove it. Now the proof is being provided, and no one can argue the counter to that. So stay tuned. There's a lot more to come.
Congressional Democrats joined protesters outside of the Capitol demanding the resignation of Elon Musk and even called on federal employees to refuse what they called illegal orders.
If you are able, stand up. If you are able, I want you to decline to enforce an illegal instruction. If you are able and the facts support the case, sign up in one of those whistleblower portals that the United States Senate Democrats have put up. We are not powerless. We are out of power. But we are not powerless.
It is worth noting that the newly created task force on the declassification of federal secrets will begin its investigations on the assassination of JFK, RFK, and MLK. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
An American history teacher who had been detained in Russia will be returning to U.S. soil this evening. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz saying today that Pennsylvania teacher Mark Fogel was leaving Russia with President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff. Trump and his team negotiated an exchange with Russia. They said it signaled a show of good faith on Russia's part toward ending the war in Ukraine. Fogel was serving a 14-year prison sentence after being arrested at a Russian airport in August of 21 for the possession of drugs. He was teaching at the Anglo-American school in Moscow for 9 years prior to his arrest. The U.S. designated Fogel as wrongfully detained. Democratic Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania praised Trump and Witkoff for their efforts in bringing Fogel home. As well, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, also a Democrat, thanking the White House for making his release possible. Today's release comes on the heels of Trump and Special Envoy Rick Grenell securing the release of 6 Americans detained in Venezuela. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.